Saint Augustine on Christian Doctrine, Book 1, Chapter 11. Wisdom becoming incarnate, a pattern to us of purification. But of this we should have been wholly incapable, had not wisdom condescended to adapt himself to our weakness and to show us a pattern of holy life in the form of our own humanity. Yet, since we, when we come to him, do wisely, he, when he came to us, was considered by proud men to have done very foolishly. And since we, when we come to him, become strong, he, when he came to us, was looked upon as weak. But the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 25. And thus, though wisdom was himself our home, he made himself also the way by which we should reach our home. Chapter 12. In what sense the wisdom of God came to us. And though he is everywhere present to the inner eye, when it is sound and clear, he condescended to make himself manifest to the outward eye of those whose inward sight it is weak and dim. For after that, in the wisdom of God, the world by wisdom knew not God, it pleased God by the foolishness of preaching to save them that believe. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 21. Not then in the sense of traversing space, but because he appeared to mortal men in the form of mortal flesh, he is said to have come to us. For he came to a place where he had always been, seeing that he was in the world, and the world was made by him. But because men who, in their eagerness to enjoy the creature instead of the Creator, had grown into the likeness of this world, and are therefore most appropriately named the world, did not recognize him, therefore the evangelist says, and the world knew him not. John chapter 1 verse 10. Thus, in the wisdom of God, the world by wisdom knew not God. Why then did he come, seeing that he was already here, except that it pleased God, through the foolishness of preaching, to save them that believe? Chapter 13. The Word was made flesh. In what way did he come but this, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us? John chapter 1 verse 14. Just as when we speak in order that what we have in our minds may enter through the ear into the mind of the hearer, the word which we have in our hearts becomes an outward sound and is called speech. And yet our thought does not lose itself in the sound, but remains complete in itself and takes the form of speech without being modified in its own nature by the change. So the divine word, though suffering no change of nature, yet became flesh, that he might dwell among us. Chapter 14. How the wisdom of God healed man. Moreover, as the use of remedies is the way to health, so this remedy took up sinners to heal and restore them. And just as surgeons, when they bind up wounds, do it not in a slovenly way, but carefully, that there may be a certain degree of neatness in the binding, in addition to its mere usefulness, so our medicine wisdom was, by his assumption of humanity, adapted to our wounds, curing some of them by their opposites, some of them by their likes. And just as he who ministers to a bodily hurt in some cases applies contraries, as cold to hot, moist to dry, etc., and in another and in other cases applies likes, as a round cloth to a round wound, or an oblong cloth to an oblong wound, and does not fit the same bandage to all limbs, but puts like to like. In the same way, the wisdom of God in healing man has applied himself to his cure, being himself healer and medicine both in one. Seeing then that man fell through pride, he restored him through humility. We were ensnared by the wisdom of the serpent. We are set free by the foolishness of God. Moreover, just as the former was called wisdom, but was in reality the folly of those who despised God, so the latter is called foolishness, but is true wisdom in those who overcome the devil. We used our immortality so badly as to incur the penalty of death. Christ used his mortality so well as to restore us to life. The disease was brought in through a woman's corrupted soul. The remedy came through a woman's virgin body. To the same class of opposite remedies it belongs that our vices are cured by the example of his virtues. On the other hand, the following are, as it were, bandages made in the same shape as the limbs and wounds to which they are applied. He was born of a woman to deliver us who fell through a woman. He came as a man to save us who are men, as a mortal to save us who are mortals, by death to save us who were dead. And those who can follow out the matter more fully, who are not hurried on by the necessity of carrying out a set undertaking, will find many other points of instruction in considering the remedies, whether opposite or likes, employed in the medicine of Christianity. Chapter 15. Faith is buttressed by the resurrection and ascension of Christ and is stimulated by his coming to judgment. The belief of the resurrection of our Lord from the dead and of his ascension into heaven has strengthened our faith by adding a great buttress of hope. For it clearly shows how freely he laid down his life for us when he had it in his power thus to take it up again. With what assurance, then, is the hope of believers animated when they reflect how great he was who suffered so great things for them while they were still in unbelief? And when men look for him to come from heaven as the judge of quick and dead, it strikes great terror into the careless, so that they betake themselves to diligent preparation, and learn by holy living to long for his approach, instead of quaking at it on account of their evil deeds. And what tongue can tell, or what imagination can conceive, the reward he will bestow at the last, when we consider that for our comfort in this earthly journey, he has given us so freely of his Spirit, that, in the adversities of this life, we may retain our confidence in and love for him whom as yet we see not. and that he has also given to each gifts suitable for the building up of his church, that we may do what he points out as right to be done, not only without a murmur, but even with delight